Hi everyone, and welcome to the In the Oven show. Today's guest started out as a farmhand and has eventually become a director of operations at Cenozon, with a few steps on the way. I'd like to introduce Mark Woynarowich.
Hey Dan, thanks for having me.
How's it going?
Awesome.
Thanks for having us come here and talk to you about all these things you're up to now and historically. It's great to the context of the show. Really, I'm sure you've watched it. I think that's how we got in touch. But is really to create a sense of excitement around Calgary and Alberta and what's going on, and have like a different angle to like a business show, really. So, Mark, who are you, and kind of where did you come from, and what makes you tick?
Yeah, no, really good question, Dan. The tick part, there's a lot to it, but it comes from who I am. So I grew up in Drayton Valley. It's kind of like the heart of oil and gas here in Alberta and Canada. And honestly, I come from a family that homesteaded here. They came from Eastern Europe and homesteaded in Alberta, and I have over 110 years of farming in my family, and we still own the land. And I've come to where I am through my family and the generations, and my dad was a regulator. He kind of instilled, the hard work and creativity, and my mom was a teacher, and my brother is an environmentalist. So we've all gone off in different paths and doing things, but I love where we're from, and I really loved, your show, just because it's not just the people, it's what we do and it's where we're from, and that's the best part about it. And I can't wait to share more about me and Cenozon and what we do with the audience.
So started off as a farm boy, and then golf club was there in the early days.
Yeah.
Like what made you decide to go from the family farm roots to more of the petrochemical, petroleum kind of angle?
Yeah, so my grandparents owned a farm. I grew up in Drayton. We lived on an acreage. Growing up, ours was just a family farm. We had chickens, pigs, cows, but it was for the farm. The grain was kind of the business side. But living on the acreage, we had neighbors, and they needed help. And I was 13, 14 years old, and they're like, can Mark come help us throw bales, clean stalls? And for a couple summers, I started helping them do that. And shortly after, one of my friends is like, I love working at the golf course. He's like, we get free golf. And I'm like, oh, I'm down. So I jumped on and started helping them out. And we were shoveling, when they go out and aerate greens, they pull up all these plugs and they just needed help. So I was pushing snow shovels all summer long, pushing the aeration off of the greens. And I loved it. But we'd start at 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock, be done by noon. I had the whole rest of the day to go golfing and do me. So I really love that. I still helped out at my neighbor's farm, but I kind of grew out and transitioned into a different work. And shortly after, I actually started working in the pro shop. They thought that I had great interpersonal skills. I loved working on the grounds crew, but being in the pro shop, meeting people, booking them in for tea times was just so enjoyable. And you get to see different people, whereas out in the golf course, you're by yourself. And then I actually started operating when I came down to school. My parents and that kind of pointed me to the direction of, going to SAIT, a technology school. My brother went to university, but for me, I was more of an athlete. I wasn't the prime, student like he was. So a tech school was more for me. It was hands-on. It was applied, like applicable to what I was doing. And my summer job, I operated and helped oil and gas companies operate their wells. You start off weed whipping, painting stuff, helping out with maintenance, and you started to learn about the business. And then after years of school, I started operating and really working with the equipment. And it kind of helped put my school and my work together and made me understand both of them to a higher degree. It was cool because there were so many things I was doing at work I didn't know more about. And then there's so many things at school that it just rounded out my work and going, oh, that's why that happens, because I learned it. So it was putting two pieces of my puzzle together that just really helped propel me. And the school just advanced me and how I learned, and just broadened my perspective on things to go, oh, this is how this works. But in other things, this is just generally how a pump works or an electrical motor. You start figuring all of that stuff out. And oil and gas is such a backbone of our economy here. Growing up, everybody in my community was associated to it. Even the people in the town, you're supporting the primary industry in Drayton Valley, which was oil and gas. The restaurants, majority of the people worked in industry, that's who you're feeding. People came in and out, but it was a great community to grow up in, and just everybody was there supporting, each other, and it didn't matter. And it was actually kind of amazing. The oil and gas industry contributes so much to the communities, and people, unless you're in those communities, don't realize it. And it's harder in a big city because there's so many people, but in a place like Drayton Valley, I don't think I ever wore a hockey jersey that didn't have a company name on it, because they sponsored us and enabled us to play this sport, but not have to be with the financial burden of buying our jerseys, which I found was kind of amazing.
How did you realize you wanted to be more hands-on? Was it just from growing up in a farm environment and you just, that more of a vocational angle?
Yeah.
And did you feel that going to SAIT helped you kind of develop that side as well?
I think I've always been a hands-on learner, but it allowed me to understand the technical and the applied science behind it. It gave me those fundamentals that really broadened my ability to learn and solve problems. And I think that's what it was. The hands-on aspect of it was fundamentally met how I learned. But it added the technical and the educational side of these are the calculations behind it and how they function, that really put the pieces together and made me realize that you can't just have one or the other. It's a little bit of everything. And that's what really made me passionate about oil and gas, is it's so diverse. There's electrical, instrumentation, mechanical, materials, there's everything. And just like every industry, there's a lot of different parts, and you need people that understand them to support it. And it just blows my mind. And now coming into a technology company, it's a huge difference. But it amazes me at what people can do when they have certain skills. And those skills can be used to complement and contribute in ways that we've never seen. So,
you were involved in construction a lot, I believe, maybe partway through your career so far? I
started out operating, and then when I came to Calgary into more of the corporate business, I managed construction and design of facilities and pipelines for...
Okay, so maybe for people that aren't aware, what is the construction process for something like a pipeline?
It's crazy. It starts from a need. You have a need to tie infrastructure together. But to do that, you have to go out and work with landowners to get the land. You have to get surveys done to get approval for the proper routing, and even just where you want to go. Is it taking it to the most optimal place? And you take into considerations all the flow dynamics and all of the, you actually pre-design what you're doing and realistically engineer it and design it for all of the compartments of how it will act, and make sure that this is the best route. It's the safest route. It's the most conducive to get the product to the endpoint that you need it. And is that endpoint the best point? Is it to you? Is it to someone else? How will that function? There's so many parts that just in planning. And then when it comes to construction, people just think it's just slapping a pipe in the ground. And yeah, it might have been that many, many years ago when we started. But even at that time, you don't build something just to have it fall apart or worry about it breaking. There's a lot of thought and effort that goes into it, right from river crossings. They've always been there. We've always known our improved processes in crossing them, lessen the impact on them, but also make the pipe safer. And working with landowners, it's not like oil and gas companies are coming in and buying them out to cut across their land. It's a partnership, because these people who are operating and managing and working in this live in that area. They respect it. And that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions is this is designed and planned to last for many years. They don't build it to fail, right? Things happen, but at the same time, they implement those learnings to help them improve. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is it's just when I started in the industry, I didn't know how a pipeline was built. I operated them, I knew what they were, but as I slowly progressed my career and working with the guys that I worked with, I gained so much knowledge, and there's so much knowledge out there in people that we're putting them into our practices and our standards so that it becomes consistent across industry. And it's really just improving all pipelines as a whole as they work together and progress. And that's one of the things I think people don't realize is companies don't work independently. They have standards and practices, and they share those to help improve, because they don't all want to be painted within a bad picture.
What are some of the things that, looking back then, you were like, I can't believe we did that sort of stuff then, and now it's like a thing of the past? Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I do. Totally. It's funny you say that, because starting in construction, my next role that I moved to at the organization I was at was integrity, which is maintenance and management and ensuring the longevity of that life cycle was there. So I realized a lot of things that I'd done wrong, but it wasn't so much wrong as we didn't know better. And some of the things that popped in mind were, when you build a pipeline, there's a protective coating around it. We've enhanced this coating type. And now they're very protective coating, like you have thin film coats on your car. Think of that, but can withstand a rock hitting it and not chipping it away. Well, we didn't have those. So now when I look back at it, why weren't we using better coatings? And we'd apply sleeves to where they weld. Now they paint them on instead of using a heat gun and shrinking them on. And those types of things are now where we look back and we see issues nowadays. And we're looking to manage and figure out why they've happened. Well, they were bad practices at the time, but we didn't know better, or the technology wasn't there to improve it. It's small things like that we're aware, and we're doing things to offset it. And that's why we have things like cathodic protection in place. It protects the external side of the pipeline with electricity and putting a current to actually help stop the electrolytes from transversing. So that's super cool. But at the same time, I look back and I go, how many pipelines did I build in that fashion? But they only fail or go into a negative environment when they're in the perfect situation. Ground conditions are like this, or somebody did something during the construction that causes it to fail, 5, 10, 15 years down the road. Some of them today, you could dig up and they'd be pristine. You would never know. So there's so many factors that come into consideration, but we've always done the best we can do.
What do you think is the biggest driver for the change over the years? Do you think it's been like a financial thing, or has it been an environmental pressure, or something else?
It's never one thing. It's all. So financially, yes. If you can have that asset last longer, it's going to make you more money. But at the same time, that means you can do more. You can develop more, produce more, or even improve your practices. Environmentally, the pressures. These companies want to do a better job. We never wanted to have pipeline failures because A, regulatory, B, environment, C, social and economical impacts. You don't want a bad rap. These guys live, they hunt, they farm in these communities. They don't want to destroy them or impact them. So they want to stay away from that. And I think those are the biggest things, that it's all of them. And with that, they're spending money to improve technologies or improve processes or identify new things. But it's also other industries are advancing things that we are bringing in and using in our industry as well. And I think that's adopting these types of technologies, like for marine coatings. Who would have thought that we'd be using the same type of coatings on pipelines that they use in marine environments, because it can actually protect our steel better. Something that's always submerged in salt water, we're putting on pipelines that are buried in dirt, and we're understanding where that happens, right? And how it's operating more, so.
Talking general construction projects here, if you were to kind of hear a competitor or a colleague talking about something, and you'd be like, that's not right, what are you doing it that way for? Is there something that comes to mind as maybe a recurring theme or the most prominent?
Yeah, that one's hard, because there's always learnings when you're working on projects. No project is the same. And that's the biggest thing. I think when you hear people say, well, I've always done it that way, that's probably the biggest, I wouldn't say misconception, but
scary thing.
Yeah, because what we're learning is we aren't doing the same things today that I was doing 10 years ago. When I was building pipelines, yes, it's still putting a pipe in the ground, it's digging, it's welding it together, or using these other types of materials. But the processes and what they do, the quality checks, even the inspection that they're performing to make sure that even the welds that they're doing are as, I don't know how to say it, but they're perfect. Like, they are checking it 3 times over, and then they check that the quality check was good. So I think that's the thing is they say we've always done it this way, but you may be still doing the same job, but many aspects have just evolved, and it's so slightly transitioned that you don't notice it, and you're like, yeah, I've always done it this way, but realistically we don't. Whether it's crossing environmental areas, you could drill underneath from one quarter of Calgary to the other quarter and never see a pipeline come above ground, just to not disrupt it and get it to where it needs to be. Do we do it? No, because there's a lot of things underground that you can't control and what may happen, but they cross very sensitive areas, and they do it not to disrupt them, the environment, the birds, the animals. You want to leave them be. You don't want to dig up their habitat. So we have practices now that allow you to step back and not be as impactful, and actually the pipeline's in a safer, better condition going under the river that way. It will never be hit. It's deep enough that it won't be impacted by if we have another Calgary flood of 2013, and channels move or riverbed scours because of the high velocity. It's safer, and it makes me feel better too.
So Mark, moving a little bit away from construction, and you're transitioning into more of the technical services environment. Like, was that a conscious decision to move away from that, and what brought that on?
Yeah, working in the construction and kind of the asset integrity industry that I was in at a producer, it was a conscious decision to move away because I felt like the environment I was working in, I had the same influences, I had the same people, I had the same environment always kind of guiding me. And I really felt like I needed to change that. I needed to grow. And that's kind of me, always looking how to improve myself or just curious in ways to do things better. And I look to people, and other people are great guidances because they help me figure out what they do, and I pick the best pieces from them, and that becomes me. So I actually transitioned to an engineering firm doing the very similar job, but being on the other side of the fence and being in a service industry where you're working for what was me at one time, you're held more accountable. But at the same time, I got more gratification from these people that I was working for. I felt like I got more, thank yous, appreciations, because I was helping them achieve things either they couldn't on their own, they didn't have time, or they didn't have the knowledge or the background. So that was great to me. I felt like I had projects I was starting on, finishing, and I felt like I was ever evolving. I liked working for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 companies, doing jobs I never thought I'd do. One of the coolest things I got to do when I first joined the engineering company was I got to do a Alberta pipeline safety review for the regulator, and it was commissioned by the Alberta government. So that was really fun. It was one of my first big projects outside of a oil and gas company. I had many big projects when I worked for them, but this was unique. And it really helped me realize that there was so much more out there to do. I worked with them for many years, auditing companies like Enbridge on their practices and procedures. And I helped many companies here, out with day-to-day things, and it was great. Moving into where I am now at Cenozon, they were a company that was growing. It was a brand new company, service company. It started out as they were offering software as a service, and the technology they had was working for a couple companies. And as they transitioned into commoditizing the product and really enhancing it to be, a true SaaS, software as a service application, we found that they needed the industry support, someone who understood the industry that we work in that could, support our clients. And because it's an integrity management and a pipeline risk system that does way more. And I don't even want to talk about that into things, because technology, like we all know, it may start off somewhere, but where it ends up could be a totally different realm. I just needed to help them work with industry, and because I had such a broad background and a general understanding of everything from drilling, completions, production, geology, reservoir from my school and my work, I'm really able to complement the business in many ways and work and understand the industry right from the business side through to the practical and the actual applications in the field, what guys are doing. I've done a lot of those jobs, so it made it easy to work with them. And that was probably harder going from the engineering company to a software company, because to me, I felt like I was changing my job.
Right.
But I didn't. I found that I'm utilizing tools to do the same job that I was doing more effectively and efficiently. And that's a lot of what I've been trying to share. And I started off doing the same job as many of our employees do, learning how to use the tool. And through that, I gained such a great knowledge, and I have amazing colleagues. You know, like I said, I love to learn from people, and I'm willing to sit there and listen and ask questions, and you just absorb so much that I understand software development from what they're doing and how they achieve it, but I could never write a line of code. I don't even understand what they're putting on the screen half the time, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's gibberish, but when it comes out in the final product and the ideas that you have and what you can accomplish in taking an idea and a process, a sound process, and how they can turn it into a program that can iterate your work and just truly optimize what you're trying to achieve is amazing to me. Some things that I used to do that we would do every year, the same thing and repeat it, now happen in the background every week, every month, every day if you wanted it, or whenever you want it, effortlessly, because the information's there and all you're doing is just looking for the newest piece to utilize it in making your decisions. So that's what's cool to me. And I love being on the technology side, because I feel like now I can truly make a difference in helping the industry, you know, harness the power of the information they have. And like you're hearing a lot, that key phrase, digital transformation. It's the future, but at the same time, it's no different than color TV, black and white to color. We don't call it color TV anymore, it's just a TV, right? I think this digital transformation and using technology, it won't just be we're using technology now, it's just the way we're using it or what we're using to perform our work.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about, you know, those processes adapting and evolving and changing. Did you feel, just stepping back to that government project you were working on, did you feel delving into all these different companies and processes that you were learning a lot from that? And what were some of the things that you picked up on?
Yeah.
There were interesting observations that you thought, well, if they did this differently.
Yeah, I did learn a lot. One of the biggest things that I learned when I looked at regulations and processes was everybody was trying to achieve the same goal. Whether it was safety or compliance or better processes, whether it be construction or monitoring, inspection. They all had this desire to improve. How they were going about it or what people were involved in improving those processes was the funny part, because they all had their unique spins. They all tried to do it a little bit differently. And to me, sitting on the outside, that was probably the most challenging aspect, was seeing so many people at the same place trying to do the same thing but slightly different, and all having little struggles but still making those steps forward. To me, if they would have, and they are, worked together better, we would be so much farther ahead, and we see that now. A lot of our recommendations, actually, I think all 15 of them were accepted and taken in, and I've looked back over the past, I think it was 2012, 2013 when it was done, so almost 10 years ago, and a lot of them have progressed what we're doing in our industry now to mitigate the things that we identified, right through from standardizing and regulations between provinces better, or better practices around water hazards and identifying where they are. It's exceptionally increased. Like, we do such a great job at not just knowing where they are, but understanding how our infrastructure lies around it, what can impact it, and it's still continually evolving. So
there's that element of business which is, you know, very competitive and everyone's in their own. Just something you said, I just picked up on that. Do you feel that competition, I mean, it's always thought that is a good thing.
Yeah.
But do you feel that sometimes it's not?
No, competition is good.
Yeah.
Business is good because the strong survive. The ones who are willing to invest in doing better will be better. And I think, to me, that's maybe why I have that kind of desire to be better is, you know, I'm working in a technology company. I never would have thought I would be at this type of organization. But I think industry can be competitive, but also be supportive. The businesses themselves, that they all have their own assets, they all have their own people. Those things, what you own and how the people you have in your organization and how your organization functions is what differentiates you. Really, your people help you pick the assets and develop them, and that's where the difference is. I think industry and a lot of the organizations and associations are working better together to harmonize some of our practices and standards so that it's required. This is what you should do, or, how you shall act. And I know those are strong words. Should and shall can be taken totally differently, but regulations that are in place for those who are unaware. And that's the good part, is our regulator, both here and in the US, I'm learning, are there to make sure that we do what's right. And in doing what's right is making those that aren't aware of it. And that's why we have inspections and audits and all these different types of oversight, is to make sure that you do things properly. They're not going to give you a permit if it's not perfect. But at the same time, they always like to ask questions. And if you can't answer them, right, you need to be able to be competent and proficient and almost proud, right?
Yeah, I think it's having this level of consensus that becomes best practice, really. And I find that's apparent in any industry, really, but especially where you're dealing with infrastructure and things that are so integral to society, that without those things historically, you wonder how things ever function properly.
I think we've taken a learning from our past, and that's the biggest thing, our infrastructure, like you say, how we're repaving roads. We're not digging up the whole road and repaving it. We're micro-scraping the surface. Or, the materials we use now in and around the gas to our house and our water lines is all plastic. It's not corrosive, so you don't have to worry about these pieces failing because of integrity or material. They have something that, honestly, they may never fail. So, we're learning from our past, we're getting better, and we're continuing to improve. And I think a lot of people, because they're just not aware of these certain things, it's not something they've read or they're invested in learning, or an industry that they're in, they don't know. And for a lot of us, not knowing is kind of our biggest problem. Is if you don't know, how can you have an opinion and investigate, learn, form your own judgment, but take in all of these different pieces. And that's kind of what I like to do. Is nobody's wrong, but I'll pick what's right and what works with me and resonates with me, and I'll use that for myself.
Do you think people I'm talking general populace here, but do you think they're getting a bit lazy? Like, do you think they're not doing those things you described? Do you think that's some of the reasons we have some of the problems, is they're not understanding and criticizing things too soon? And
I don't know. That's a hard question. I don't think I have an answer for you on that one. Do I think people are lazy? No.
I just mean information collection. Do you think they're just making too many assumptions and not doing due diligence?
I think there's so much information that we just don't know, not what's right or wrong, but what's the best, right? And you can get misled, or it might not be the whole truth. We used to all have Webster's dictionaries sitting on our shelves at home, and A to Z encyclopedias. That's what everybody used. Now the web has everything, right? And I think it's good because you can gather a lot of pieces, and you almost have to problem solve to figure out what's right. But at the same time, just having so much, I think a lot of people get overwhelmed and say, you know what, it's not worth it. Or they're scared. I think being scared to make a wrong decision is one of the biggest things. And I tell every one of my employees, I'm like, I'd rather have you make a mistake, because at least for us, you can learn from it. And in where we are, it's not going to have an immediate impact today with what you're doing, because our systems, we manage so much in what we call a test environment. We run it through there, we work in there. And the production environment in which we have is a consistent environment that they're always viewing and looking at. And it just makes things so that it's consistent information to make informed decisions on, quicker, better, faster. And it's almost like people say, we're doing more with less people. Yeah, but give yourself credit. You're doing more with more information. So, it's funny, I talked about somebody saying that we've gotten less busy over time, and I have trouble with that word. But it's a whole different story that you and I can talk about. But I don't feel I'm any less busy. I feel like I have more on the go than I ever did. But I also feel more effective and efficient because I plan what I do. I don't get caught up in something that isn't purposeful. And things that aren't, I'm doing it for a reason, and I've chosen to do it. And I accept that. And I try to manage myself in a way where I operate in a very sound, proficient, and consistent manner. And that's come in time. And when I was in construction and working at CNRL, it was not that type of environment, but it was awesome to work in because it helped me become who I am. And there was things I achieved there that I probably would look back at and I would not be able to achieve today. Mm-hmm. And it's gratifying to know that too.
Such as, like, what things? Like?
The amount of work that I would do in a day, the number of phone calls, the number of projects I was coordinating, the mass chaos in which I worked and still was able to keep everything aligned to build projects, get them permitted, have everybody safe. Mm-hmm. I think in my 13 years there, I had one severe incident, and many small ones, but I had amazing construction crews and leads and foremans and inspectors that worked with me that I gave so much trust to. Mm-hmm. And they took that responsibility, but it was also their job. So people don't realize that how much onus and accountability we take. You know, there was guys out there working for me. They cared about everybody. They've had tailgates every morning. They see somebody stepping on the wrong side of something, and they're there to help them understand why. Mm-hmm. and learn so they don't do it again. Yeah, it's unreal taking phone calls at 4 o'clock in the morning because that's when they started working. Yep. You know, sun's up. They're getting out there before the day starts. They're putting in 12-hour days, which means if they have to drive an hour to get there, they're going 6 to 6 because at 6 o'clock at night it's dark and they can't work. So, especially in winter, they're trying to get the most out of it. So.
Do you think it was inevitable that you became a director of operations? Do you think you were just kind of naturally going that way?
Tell you the truth, I never wanted to be a manager, let alone a director.
Did you feel you were ready? Did it happen to you? Like, what was the process?
I felt like I was already doing it.
Okay.
So it was natural progression. Would I be in this same role if I was at a different organization? I don't know. But to me, I've always felt like I've always kind of been a leader, mm-hmm. You know, captain of sports teams, coordinating things with friends. I always had that instilled in me growing up. But I've always been so involved in everything. Mm-hmm. Here, right when I started, I worked with developers. I helped support sales. I learned from many of the people that are still here that I work with, and I won't say work, I almost work for them now. It's amazing because I know everything they do, I can understand it, and it helps me facilitate the business more and grow and evolve it. And that's what I'm doing, is I'm helping them do their job better because they're helping me, and we're helping our clients or our industry, because in a lot of times it's not just our clients, it's their service providers and people they work with. And it's the multiplier of many, I say. It's more than 2. And anytime you have more than 3, it just amplifies the results that you get. Mm-hmm.
So Mark, I'm conscious we haven't talked that much about Cenozon yet.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about what they do?
Yeah, so being a technology company and working with oil and gas, we do a lot of things. You know, we have a lot of different applications that they utilize, right from measurement, management, our mobile device that helps capture field data information, right through our flagship product that's been around with us the longest, PERM, which is pipeline integrity risk management, but it's asset management, bringing all of this information together. That's probably the most utilized tool that we have, and it's one of the tools that is most well accepted at a lot of companies. It has been transforming our industry, and we've really been enabling companies to do more because we're taking things that they used to spend a lot of time doing, a lot of effort, a lot of manpower, a lot of frustration, and just simplifying it, making it repetitive by connecting pieces of their organization that they had in different silos or different systems together. And they still have them in those original business units where they use this software to collect data from a well. And then they have this mapping system, but we have a very unique tool that has allowed them to tie all of this together and just better understand their systems. And with that better understanding, the evolution of evolving and improving their processes is what we're helping them. We're empowering them with their data to do more. And that's the fun part about what I like doing, is I used to do it. I used to do what they were doing, have the same frustrations, and now we're just making it readily available every day, every week. And I know we kind of touched on it. We have more information than we know what to do with. And we're learning how it can be more purposeful and where it can add value. But some of the stuff we utilize is last week's information, because you don't need today's to make today's decision. And we're like a big truck with slow moving wheels that just goes through the mud and makes it out the other end, our industry. And a lot of times things don't change. But when they do, that's when you want to be able to look at it and understand what that change was. And that's what Cenozon does. We help collect this information from all of these various wells and pipelines and facilities and pipelines and where they are, and tie it together. And we help them to understand when small things change so that they're aware of it. It might not have an impact today, but down the road, knowing of when it changed or how it changed really helps their organization improve.
It's interesting really to think about data in such a way. I don't know, historically I imagine we didn't really care too much about data. It was, years gone by, it was very experimental and things just happened. We did it the way we did it. And I just think data is becoming fundamental in the way we do business. You look at like online analytics for myself, like where content does, advertising has moved online. We're living in a data-driven world. Yeah. Do you feel that people are embracing it and adopting it, or do you still find hesitancy to do things an old-fashioned way? And I guess it varies, but maybe give perspectives.
Both. We're adopting and hesitant, and I think we need that to balance it out. That way it doesn't go too quick and we end up off the rails. But at the same time, people are progressing and pushing forward to adopt technology and pulling those ones who don't along with them. And sometimes it's the ones who are most hesitant that once you get them utilizing it, they realize how much value they gain from it and how simple it actually can be. I agree with you. There's so much information out there, and I know we're not using very much. Even in oil and gas, the amount that we're using is so minimal compared to how much we're collecting. But it's still there. And down the road, as we evolve in the technology and our need to utilize it changes, we're going to build things like we did today that are helping industry today that we didn't have in the past. And having this information available now in its form will allow us to do something with it. So it still has its purpose. We just haven't figured out how to do it. And that's the fun part, is finding a solution to the problem. And when you get that progressing forward and you make that achievement, it's almost like, what's the next problem? We're happy we solved one problem, but we're already looking for the next one to solve. And data, it almost seems like it's becoming a commodity, but I feel like it shouldn't become a commodity, because it's not the data that's of value, it's what you do with it. And I think if we're conscious and really make sure that we know how we're collecting it and don't allow people to, I wouldn't say manipulate, but hold it hostage, it's your information. And I think what you do with it, you should be empowered to be allowed to do what you want. And honestly, I think there's so much more. And yes, security laws and safety laws and privacy acts all have to come into consideration, but all of that can be taken care of. And I think the value of the more, we're all expected to do more with less people, but when you take the positive side on that, we're doing way more with more information because of the amount of information we have. And actually, we aren't doing enough because we have too much information. But I think those tides will turn, and technology will really help us solve and find those uses. And that will be the difference, is with all of this information and this data, that more, we're going to continually improve what we're doing.
What are your thoughts on things like AI?
Cool.
Yeah.
It's extremely cool. There's so many uses, but artificial intelligence and machine learning, they are taking a sound process and an iterative process of which it can repeat. And I think a lot of it has to have the foundation of what problem you're trying to solve. And yes, it can find different paths or different routes to still achieve that same result. But the cool part about that is the amount and the speed in which we can do it. And that's neat to me, because just like internet, the speed of our internet or the processing power of our computer systems that we use is ever increasing. That's what machine learning is it's increasing our ability to process and almost run this information through a system quicker, faster, and it never stops or takes a lunch break.
Yeah. Well, I think it removes those, I don't want to say it, but like boring, menial jobs that are just iterative and just have always been done, and it just frees people up to do more exciting things.
Right.
Like there was always this thing where people are scared a little bit of AI replacing jobs and that sort of things, but I don't see it that way. I see that it frees up those jobs that are more manual and crunching, and you can do more. You then learn how to use the data or process and to your benefit.
I think that's why you and I clicked off so much. Is people are amazing to me. The creativity and abilities that people have to learn and adapt, I think, is higher than a computer. And it does free up time. Yes, people are worried about, computers taking over their job, but at the same time, was that job meaningful? Doing that same task, putting that same bolt on, repeating day over day, that same, even mining data, was that valuable? Some people love it. To me, not so much, but there's value to it. And get people doing higher value tasks, things that they feel more proud of, or things that they can be purposeful with and contribute, because everybody has their unique abilities and where they can contribute and what they can do. And these other tasks that, why repeat the same thing day in and day out? And solving those and having those off our plate, you also take that effective human error out. And I think that's one of the biggest things, is you get consistency. A lot of our programs, we tie autonomously together, automated processes. And that's a big thing for us, because we take that chance of human error out, right from pulling information out to dumping it into a system. Nobody touches it. And one thing we do with that is to reduce the human error, but also for security. It's under-coded transfers. You can't even decrypt it, because it's coded when it leaves one place and decoded when it gets to another. And it's in secure environments that we like to think are impenetrable. And with that, there's a lot less, or there's a reduction in chances for error. Whether it's human or machine, you reduce those chances for error, which give you better quality. And that's what we want: higher quality to make higher, more informed decisions, faster decisions to make better business choices. And that's what accelerates businesses, is allowing them and empowering them to do better by having that information on hand to make the decision when they want to, not spending more time gathering the information they need to make the decision than making the decision itself.
So sticking with people a little bit, you're a Canadian company, and you've recently started to move, earlier this year, started a new office in Houston. Like, what was that like? What were the challenges and your experience through that?
It was amazing. Being Canadian, we're proud. I've always been proud of what I do. I think it's instilled in us. My grandfather, even though he
we can hear the train now.
Oh yeah.
With the feeling Canadian, like
very Canadian. I think it is CP too. My grandfather homesteaded here, and he farmed on this land for over 110 years. When you ask him, even though he came straight from Romania, he was Canadian. He wasn't born here, but he was Canadian. And I like to think that moving to the US, there's been lots of challenges, but there's lots of support, both from industries down there, acknowledging and accepting who we are and what we have, knowing that our technologies maybe in some areas are more advanced or different perspectives. They welcome it. The people down there are great. Opening our office was a challenge. We opened it in February of this year. But I have spent the last 5 years traveling back and forth between the US, conferences, getting to know, Houston, the industry, the people, how similar, dissimilar it was to what we were doing here, to spending a lot of time utilizing tools to evaluate the market, the people, where we should be, what should we be doing. The fortunate part for us is we're a technology company, so we don't have a physical piece of equipment we have to put there. We can put our servers and our tool within their inland servers and their security systems, which is totally doable. And that's one of the reasons we facilitated having an office there, was to put a footprint. We are considered having a US arm. And the biggest thing is putting a market entry, a strategy, a plan in place. That has been exciting. And for us, it's the most exciting, and I'd like to acknowledge that it has its challenges. Like with any business, it's like we're starting over again. But we've been fortunate that a couple of our clients here are have U.S. properties that we're supporting now as well, and that's helped us because it's easy to say we can do work down here, but to actually say we are doing work. It's not a can, we are. It makes a difference, and it makes them feel more comfortable, no different than when we started here.
Do you feel as a Canadian company that you have to have that kind of outpost to successfully break into the US market? I mean, you don't have to, but has it helped?
I don't know. I'll let you know in the next year or two how much it helped.
Yeah.
I think there is a benefit. It's no different than having people there.
But is there an expectation, do you think?
I think there is, yeah, and there should be. We'll end up contributing to their economy as much as we do ours, and that's the give and take. Having a foundation and a footprint there supports that you're doing business with. We're going to hope to employ people there to support an industry that we're going to support there, and we'll give back to those communities no different than we do here with our companies and our organizations that we work with here as well. So I think it's part of business that if you're going to work in a country, you should have some form of footprint or partnership even. And there's tons of support from, the provincial and federal governments here to help empower you, give you information, help you get established, which is actually quite great because, they are our biggest trading partner, but we also have to work together.
You mentioned that you were proud of being, a Canadian company. What does it feel like to operate that way? And I guess you've kind of stayed in Canada through your working life so far.
Yeah.
Which is fine, you obviously love it here. Is that sense of pride, is that important to you?
It is, yeah. Just being a Canadian has a true sense of pride because, you've traveled the world, the Canadian maple leaf and who we are. We all wear it when we're places, whether it's our hockey team or anything. I think Canadians are proud of who we are and what we do, and although the whole world has gone through some trying times, I like to still think I'm very proud to be Canadian. Will I always stay here? Well, we'll see. It's home. It always has been. But maybe I will travel to the US more. Maybe I'll help really facilitate our office down there. I'm working with our sales team and our partners down there that we have been working with for a couple of years now. So it's great exposure and experience, and maybe it's a new chapter of my life too.
I'd like to delve into it's not really the elephant in the room, but it's a hot topic about fossil fuel industry and the transitions people talk about and, coming off it and all that sort of stuff. What are your feelings working in the industry and your perception of the fossil fuel industry?
Yeah. I'd like to say I have a very unbiased opinion. Growing up in a small town, being a farm kid at heart, I'm tied to the land. So my brother's an environmentalist, so I have that side of me. But at the same time, it's always had a purpose, and it's helped us develop to the country that we are and have the things that we have. Fossil fuels, oil and gas, electric, solar, geothermal, energy, sustainability, technology. It is a big question, but I think it has to be the elephant in the room to make that next step of progression. And to me, it's finding the right balance. Growing up, recycle, reuse, reduce, and then my wife was telling me, no, there's repurpose. So they've even added one to that, repurpose. I think it's great, but I think we need balance. I honestly think we need to waste less. So having things that last longer and we're not wasteful with, and not being wasteful and using things just because it's there, or burning things just because it can be burnt. I think understanding that we have to find the balance, and there's opposite ends of every scale. I like to think that we have to have those opposite ends to progress, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be actually making the movements forward that we need to. But at the same time, we also need to understand that without it, we wouldn't be where we are. The technology, electronics that we have that are making a lot of this world that we live in possible wouldn't be here without it. And at the same time, I think we have to recognize that we're also very wasteful. Why do we need a new TV just because it's bigger? Why do we need to have a truck that burns so much to travel the same distance that another truck could do burning way less or none at all? To me, I don't know where it's going to go. Improving and doing better, yes. Electric vehicles, I think not burning fossil fuels is great. Not having that emissions into the atmosphere is great, because we do have to think about human beings 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now. People are saying our next generation, our children's children, but what about even farther than that? We only have one world, right? And I think, to me, I'm not on either end of the scale. I know that we need it, but I know there's something better. I don't know what it is. Is electric vehicles going to solve our problem? Probably not, but they're going to help. Are there other things that we could utilize to improve our world? Yes. What are they? And are they achievable today? Can we put them everywhere? Is it safe? I don't know. But I think it is a good topic to be on the forefront. Climate-wise, world-wise, environmentally, I think we have to be cautious of our decisions and make the best decisions for humanity as a whole, and not be selfish as well.
I don't know. I'm a bit cynical about these things, where the governments aren't set up well for things to change drastically, and also I feel that, like you hinted, their lifestyles have just got out of hand, really. And I think without significant societal change, very difficult to do what is needed. There's still a place for oil and gas, of course there is. It's inevitable, it's part of human nature. We fly, we're connected, Solar power, wind power isn't there at the moment to back up, and it will always have a place. But I feel without significant change to lifestyles, I don't know, I worry.
I think we all do, but then at the same time, other people don't. And that's the diversity of the culture we live in. And we're never gonna make everybody happy, and not to get into politics or anything, but that's why there's a choice in multiple parties. I don't even know if there's a right political party. Our society has evolved so much in a structure where, is it still suitable today as it was before? Without diving into all of those ends and having a 16-hour conversation. And I don't know where it's going, but I know change is good. Not all change is, but I think if we look at it in the way where, for progressing our evolution and maintaining our environment and knowing that we only have one world, just like you only have one life, and make the most of it, we also have to make the most of it for our children and our children's children and the world as a whole, because this is where we're from.
I'm not generalizing here, but there are people that think we can just move off the planet and start up things like on Mars and the moon. And I get a bit nervous about that, because, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I asked the question, but I don't know, I feel like we should be coming back and going, hang on, we've got such an incredible place to live on already. Should we not try a little bit harder to stay here a bit more and figure it out? And I feel it is, and I understand there's two angles of this, because there's the scientific angle where a lot of stuff that happened through space exploration and that has brought us on quite a lot. But like, if there was the pure energy put into developing that technology to be on Earth, and wouldn't the same happen, and we'd be more centric as a globe and as a one species? Can't
we do both?
Well,
it's like my boss. He always asks me, he's like, why not do both? and honestly, we'll get so much from that type of exploration that we can use here. But if we progress it here and there, we're going to benefit in both places. I think, should we put all of our efforts, and is that our golden ticket? I don't know. Does anybody know? But the dreamers and the creators of going beyond the stars, if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be where we are today with normal life.
Of course.
Right?
That's what I mean. That's what I said, Yeah, I just get a bit skeptical about the billionaires going on a little trip to space and back and just on a 15-minute vacation or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, is that really important? I get what you're doing it, but the whole space tourism angle, I get a bit skeptical about.
Totally. Yeah, I can't blame you for that. And honestly, it is what it is.
Yeah, I know it's not going to change. I like to talk about it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I would say it's pretty amazing that we're able to fly outside of our orbit.
Oh, yeah.
And would you have ever thought that without being a part of NASA, you could do that, let alone land a plane back on Earth that you could repurpose, or a space shuttle? Like, that's pretty cool. And advancing technologies and the speed that they were able to do that in that type of industry versus this amazes me. That's cool to me.
Yep.
So having somebody that progresses that, their purpose and their meaning behind it, that's theirs.
Yeah.
You know, let them have that. But having that ability to bring together the people to achieve that type of result in such a short time frame, and people going like, that wasn't possible. Well, anything's possible. But getting those right pieces together to achieve that, that's what I like about being at Cenozon is you're utilizing technology to advance your business in ways you didn't think were possible. And people say you can't do that. And you're like, it's so simple. Like, I know it sounds hard, but it's so simple now. And I wish that you would just entrust in it so that we could help you. We could learn from you, and you could learn from us, and we could work together and do more. That's me. Like, in the epitome of who I am, that's me. Yeah. And I wish more of us could do that and not have trust, but not be so cynical and not trust each other. But I don't think that's enlisted in everybody, which is why we have to be cautious, right? So
yeah, it's a balance, isn't it? I was thinking the other day, I was watching Back to the Future 2 for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
And it was just interesting, not on the topic of fossil fuels at all, but like just what had been predicted at the time. And it was 2015, the year they went to. So years ago from now, and it was like flying cars and all the hoverboard stuff, and it was so funny to I've watched it obviously a few years ago, but just watching it, I was going, it just dawned on me like we had, all this stuff, flying cars, and
so cool.
It's so cool, but like how that hasn't happened in transition. I was watching the credits just at the end of it, and they had like future experts to like tell them what might be in the future and stuff. So it was just
I've actually never watched that part.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay. No, it was just the credits explaining they had future experts listed in the credits, and it was just like, I had no idea till the end. It was just on, and Netflix happened to, I don't know if we switched a button by accident, it was playing all of the credits, because normally it puts it in a little box. And, but I was watching it going, oh yeah, I never even thought. So they'd like consulted with people as to what was going to be the future. But it always makes me think about like programs like the cartoons, the Jetsons and stuff, where they're flying around in spaceships and stuff. And it's now, or a few years ago. Yeah,
and it's funny to think that that's what they thought the future would be like. But when you're in it now, and you're like, oh, well, we do some of those things, but then we're thinking what it will be like in our future. And if you even look at cartoons now and what you expect our children will be watching and what they think their future will be like, or their projections are, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't turn out something like the Avengers or something like that.
Yeah, totally. Mutants, right? Oh, wow.
So, Mark, we talked about the future, and really I kind of want to know how you would advise your clients of the major changes that are coming in the industry.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. And honestly, with their cautious kind of adoption of technology and how they've been going, I think it's getting to a point where they're already using a lot of tools and technologies to help them. They're being more open to it, and they know that the world as a whole has improved from where it was. So I think they see that we're on that tipping point, and they're working with industries and different organizations to educate them on where their challenges are, but also to learn. And that's what we're doing, is we're becoming teachers and learners to help each other move forward and progress. And that's the biggest part, is technology doesn't create solutions. The industry looks for a solution, and technology helps them create that solution to help them advance. And I think a lot of things is we have these opposite ends, the people who are very cautious and the ones who just want to start going forward with everything. And they work to balance each other, because one kind of drags the other one along and moves at a slower pace and pulls the other one back. And I think through that, it really helps everybody progress at a better pace without moving too quick and not getting what you thought, or moving too slow and taking too long and not achieving it quick enough. I think that's the thing, is both the pace and the knowledge base need to move forward, and that's the biggest part. When I came here, I knew nothing about development and product creation and things like that, and to me, that was the biggest thing that I had to learn. But I still don't know it. I understand it, and I have people that work with me to help me. I think at a lot of the organizations and companies we work with, having people to help advise them internally so that they're not trusting someone else that isn't within the organization, they can go internally and help. I think that will be a big thing moving forward, is having internal experts, people knowledgeable around technology, chief information officers, chief technology officers, people on boards that have actually worked in software companies, to be there to help guide and provide as a backboard, because so many people, they just don't know, right? And I think that will be the big change going forward, is you'll have more people at organizations that are knowledgeable, sound, helping guide them, so that the balance of the two organizations or companies moving forward. And we'll see a lot of companies bringing it in-house, developing their own, building their own teams to support their needs with really strong expertise in supporting their organizations.
Change is always talked about, and having to be ready for it, and nimble, and we always say that smaller companies are better at that, and bigger companies are clumsy and process driven, or full of processes. Like, is there one thing in the business world that, I hate to throw big words out, but like you despise, or like you wish you could change that?
I wish, that's a really good one. I wish that I wish people shared information better. I wish people shared their successes and stories and accomplishments more, because I think that would help us adopt and improve what we're doing if there was more of that type of sharing.
Like from a collaboration?
From a collaboration, or even just,
You feel it's too much like cards close to the chest?
It is.
Or in the chest.
Yeah, it is. But the only thing that is consistent in everything we do is change.
Yeah.
Right? You said it yourself. Smaller companies might be more nimble because there's less parts being impacted, or there's fewer people. But regardless of where you are, change is hard. We're genetically built, I swear, to not like change, and that's why some of us are so comfortable with where we are. But without change, you don't build and improve and progress, and things aren't different, so you don't know how to adapt. And I think that's one thing that I've learned, is I'm very adaptable. But with that has come a lot of change, and I just know that with every other change, you need to take a step back and see what it is that is different, and move forward and identify how you can overcome those to improve yourself or your organization, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting point to make, because it's really, I don't know, it's really prominent. Because I enjoy collaboration, working with other companies, getting to know them, and there's, from my intentions, to put my perspective in here, it's not really, I don't find it important to be, really cards close to your chest. And I find the more I collaborate with people and get involved with partner companies, the better I do, the more things I learn, just throughout delivering projects and collaborating. So I've always been an advocate for that. And when you're working with clients, especially in what I do media-wise, it's so surprising how little people want to share, because everything's seen as being very, it's our product, we can't give secrets away, can't tell what we're doing. So I come from the spectrum, but I see it too much. So it's interesting you've made that point, that people are scared to educate, communicate, and share those things.
I think the educate and communicate are there. They just need to be supported more. Technology, our technology and how we house it, there's some things we aren't going to share about it. There's things in how it functions and why it does what it does that people won't see. But they still get to use it, and they get to use a lot more of it than a lot of other systems or a lot of other tools out there. And that's the neat part. And there's so much that we share with them that it does, but how we're capable of doing it is what sets us apart. And you don't need to see that, but understanding what goes in, how it's functioned, where it comes out, and why it's there, all of that is 100% clear. And I think that's the part that you still hold your cards close in what you need to, but around the other things that can help other people, it's clear. It's out there. It's not hidden or locked behind a door. We don't show you why.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger difference is there's parts we don't share.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't know how our system's architected.
No.
And that's what makes it different. But all the inputs and all the outputs, everybody's doing it,
Mm-hmm.
but how we do it is different. And that's what sets us apart is the people we hired,
Mm-hmm.
how we built it, and why it's doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
But we have a great consortium of partners, clients, and we bring them together as best we can. And we just hope that they share that with their peers in their industries. Because for me, it's a grander thing. I wish I could do everything for free and do all of this, and maybe one day I will. But at the same time, we're progressing our tool, and we need something to help facilitate that within our organization. And I wish a computer was free, because then I'd be able to do so much more. But you know, the cost of doing business and what we do is all entrained in everything. And I'm glad we have such faithful users. You know, some over 25 years old, and it's amazing to have that type of business and history to build on and build forward with.
I think it's hard for companies, like if you imagine standing in a row, for example.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people, I think, sometimes to take that initial step to put themselves out there and be the one that...
Yeah.
Everyone thinks they're being innovative.
Yeah.
But like to stand out and be like outspoken about, not outspoken, but like, you know, confident in what you're doing and set a trend and a standard. I feel everyone's kind of a little bit waiting for someone else to do it. Like they think they're leading, but do you know what I mean?
I think we're seeing more of it, the entrepreneurial spirit, and I love it. I'm actually working with a couple of young gentlemen who have that passion. They have some new technology. They have a new industry, and honestly, I'm just there to listen and help. And they've only been talking to me for the past little while, and I truly enjoy it because they're going to make a difference. And they have an idea, and a lot of times, and that's how the industry we worked with. Let somebody else test the waters. Let them make sure that it works, and then we'll follow suit, and everybody else will come in after. But somebody has to do it first. I think we're finding that people now are more willing to take that chance, and that's where that ingenuity is coming from, that creativity, and I like it. That's not how I was raised. It was my mom was a teacher, my dad worked for the same company for almost 40 years as a regulator. Like, you know, coming to a startup software company, that was stepping outside of my box. To now I'm helping two young gentlemen start up their very own company that's going to be starting in an infancy of a new industry that's going to support a sustainable green energy here. It's cool to be involved with and to see their passion behind it and what they believe they can do to make a difference. That's interesting.
Do you think the pandemic has kind of spurred that sort of thing on?
Maybe. Maybe it's accelerated it. Maybe it's just made it clear because people have had time to focus in on that. I don't know. That's a really good question, and I wish I had an answer.
No, it's interesting. I always ponder it, and you hear some industries probably have, and when people have been out of a job, I'm like, I'm going to try that thing, and then they do it. And
totally.
Maybe not as much in the technology realm as much, because I feel that's always very exciting and moving and changing, but I think some people have probably come out of their comfort zone or been thrown out of it, I guess is the right phrase for it. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for joining me on the show. It's been a pleasure. Where can people find you online? Where's best?
Yeah, thanks for having me first off, Dan. It's been a great experience. I love talking about who I am, what I do, and sharing that message. And you know, you'll find me on LinkedIn. You'll find out about Cenozon on our website, and we're part of industry and associations, and there's a lot out there. But online, you know, we have Facebook, Instagram. Well, no, we don't have an Instagram. Good. We have Facebook, LinkedIn, and our website. So,
Fantastic, Mark. Thanks so much. Thanks,
Dan.
So thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you like the content, please do not like. I don't want you to do that. If you feel like subscribing, do not do that. Go to another channel and try subscribing to another one. I do not want any more subscribers. And comments, I do not want to create any sense of community in the comment section. I just want you to watch the video for 10 seconds and move on. So please do not do any of that stuff. But hopefully I will see you next time.